What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Dude Hine Show. Today is July 7th, 2021. And on today's video, I have guest Mike on the Mike Sports. How you doing today, Mike?
Doing awesome. Glad to be on the show once again.
I mean, we have a lot to talk about. Today, like I said, is Wednesday. This past weekend was July 4th. Did you have a good July 4th weekend and everything?
Yeah, we had a relaxing time. My dog's really scared of fireworks. We were talking about it before the show, so we kind of just had to stay in and keep her as calm as we can. She still was freaking out a little bit, but we helped her out. The vet gave us some calming medicine to help, so it helped a ton.
That's pretty good. I mean, I had a dog, too, with fireworks. I mean, that's something I don't really think it's talked about enough, because, dogs can run away a lot more than people think through fireworks. We had a pretty nice, 4th of July weekend as well. And, yesterday, we'll go ahead and start with the top topic here. It was the first game, of the NBA Finals. The Suns defeated the Milwaukee Bucks. So what were some of your thoughts, on game one?
I mean, first thought, obviously, is seeing Giannis out there. That was a big deal for the Bucks to see him out there. And he seemed not 100% because he wasn't as aggressive as he usually is, especially offensively with the ball in his hand. But he seemed to be moving around at a level where you feel like he's going to get close to 100%, early on in this series versus before we were thinking about game 4 or 5, maybe he's getting close to 100%. But I think as soon as game 2, we could see Giannis making a bigger impact as far as scoring the ball and being aggressive and going after the Suns defense and seeing what they got. And that's what the name of the game is for the Bucks and how they're successful. When Giannis is being aggressive, getting to the rim, throwing them down, and then once you go to try and stop that, they can kick it to guys like Middleton, kick it to guys like Drew Holiday, kick it to their shooters that are going to keep them in these games with the team as good as the Phoenix Suns have been this year. I was worried seeing Giannis play because I truly believe that the Bucks can still win this series even with losing game 1, and that was with the thought that Giannis wasn't going to play in game 1. But I do not believe that if they rushed him back and he got hurt again, that they can win this series without Giannis for the whole thing. So I thought that was a huge risk they took last night. That was my first thought, obviously, was that he's out there, which to me gives me a little bit more confidence in my Bucks pick. Even after the Bucks dropped game 1 to the Phoenix Suns, it was in Phoenix. You just want to steal one of those games in Phoenix, and they got a couple more opportunities for it.
To me, watching the game, I felt like, obviously the Suns, it seems like they were in majority of the control of the second half of the game, but there's some big advantages and some, high hopes for both teams because you really look at the Phoenix, for example. They won by double digits. Jay Crowder was horrible. So they have that to look forward to. I mean, despite having, for the most part, a really nice game for Phoenix, once Jay Crowder steps up and has a normal game, you're going to get even more production from some of your, side players and everything, some of your, role players. So, I mean, you have that. And then look at Milwaukee. He only lost by around 10, 12 or so. Giannis did not play much of a good game. Like you said, he was injured for the most part. I mean, Chris Middleton, I know Tony Tucker loves him a ton, but he's one of the most inconsistent players in the league, in my opinion. And, Chris Middleton, honestly, to me, I know Giannis was, with him being healthy, that's a big question mark. I think Chris Middleton is one of the biggest question marks for Milwaukee because if he can stay consistent, I think the Bucks can win the finals, but he has to stay consistent. That's something he's not, seems like he's being able to do consistently. And somebody else for Milwaukee, Holiday, he was not good at all. And, Holiday, I think it was 4-12, 4-16, something like that. Yeah. Middleton was not good. Giannis wasn't good. So losing by 10 or 12, and all three of those guys, your three best players, not really even having, none of those guys having a good game. One of those guys can have a great game, and the other guys can have a better game. I definitely think Milwaukee can possibly steal game 2, but it has a lot to determine, if they can stay healthy. Middleton has to be consistent. Holiday can step up. But, there's been times, Holiday, Middleton, they've shown that they can step up. It's just a matter if they will or not. But, my finals prediction was Phoenix in 6. And, despite, them winning by double digits, to me, the fact that they only won by double digits with Milwaukee struggling really so bad really shows you, to me, honestly, I think this can be closer than what people think. Because if Milwaukee steals game 2, that is, in my opinion, possibly a momentum shift in the whole finals. Because if you get one road game in the finals. That's what all it can take. You get a lot of momentum. I mean, we've seen that in years past. But I really feel like both teams have something to look forward to because neither team, in my opinion, really played great. Honestly, I don't see CP3 having a game like that, game 2. But Crowder stepping up. I mean, they might have the same total points combined, but Crowder stepping up and CP3, I don't expect him to be as good. Well, you look at Milwaukee. Some of those guys are going to step up. I'm very, very interested in game 2, and I think both teams have a lot of stuff to look forward to and heading into Thursday.
Yeah, this is one of the few finals that we've seen, especially of recent times, where the role players and the depth and the completeness of each team is really what's going to determine who wins this, who plays better as a team. It is not on the back of a superstar player. Everyone needs to contribute for both Milwaukee and for Phoenix as they go for this trophy, and whichever team can get that contribution from the role players at the highest level seems to be the team that's going to win each game and win the finals overall. I just hope that it goes 6 or 7 games so we can get the full entertainment out of it. We get to see Giannis at full health towards the end of the series on the back end, and we can really see what the Bucks and the Suns got. And the best team will come out on top. I had the Bucks in 6 as my original prediction. I want to stick by it just because I always want to be right. But could this series be going 7 games? I think it could be going 7 games. And that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, like I said, I picked Suns in 6, and I think, with the Bucks playing so bad, I still think this series can be closer because it really should have been a lot closer. The Suns took advantage of the Bucks not playing well at their full advantage, but I mean, I think it can be a good series. Something to me, I just hope both teams are 100% healthy because, I mean, we've seen. I mean, who's to say the Suns don't even make it past the first round, with Davis being injured with LA, and then they have, play some other injury teams like the Clippers with Kawhi out. And I just hope both teams are healthy so we can see, a great finals. Something else, I'm really glad that there's not top market teams in the NBA finals for once. It's something different, something I enjoy. I mean, it's the Bucks and Suns. I don't think anybody expected either one of these teams to be in the finals except Joe Morley. But what?
Don't get it started. I see him in the chat already. He's gonna start saying crap.
But honestly, it doesn't really matter to me who wins. I would like to be right with my Suns in 6 prediction, but it's just nice and refreshing to see 2 teams who have struggled for the most part for years. The Suns haven't been in the playoffs in a decade. The Bucks have not won a championship, I believe, since the 70s or something like that. And I mean, it's nice to see not top teams, because none of these players have even won a championship before. Yeah. The only player in either one of these teams who even played in the finals was Jay Crowder back with the Cavs. And I'm hoping both teams can stay healthy. And I'm really hoping to see if the Bucks can perform better than they did in Game 1. Play much better because they just did not play good. If Middleton, Giannis and Holiday can just play good games, not necessarily great, and if Phoenix plays like they did yesterday, I honestly think Milwaukee can steal Game 2.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I want to say one more thing before we move on to the next topic. You were saying that, it's on Middleton to be consistent. It's on Middleton to fuel the Milwaukee Bucks this series and be the X factor that we know he can be, and that Tony Tucker is in love with Middleton. Tony Tucker wants people to doubt Middleton. He wants that. He loves it when Middleton proves them wrong, it ties back to the inconsistency thing. Tony Tucker, off of a bad game, Tucker will be like, watch Middleton in the next one. And then Middleton will have a great game, and he'll be like, look at that. And then he'll have a bad game, so now the naysayers can come back at him, and then he'll have a good game. So Tony Tucker wants it. He wants that pressure on Middleton so he can come back at you.
Yeah. Tony Tucker loves Chris Middleton like Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill and Urban Meyer loves Tim Tebow. I mean,
was it you that put in the comments that was like, I just want someone to love me the way Tony Tucker loves Chris Middleton?
I wish somebody would love me the way Tony Tucker loves Chris Middleton. Yeah. But, I mean, it's true, though. I mean, but it's going to be really interesting to see, Game 2 tomorrow, see if the Bucks can possibly steal a game in Phoenix. Moving on to our next topic, I'm not really much into the Olympics, But USA, track and field runner Sha'Carri Richardson was not on the team because she failed a marijuana test, and she failed a drug test, and they're not allowing her on the team. And despite one of the places she was accused of having marijuana in, it was one of actually the legal states that you can have it in. What are your thoughts on this whole situation and everything?
Man, it's such a rough situation, such a tough topic to talk about. I'm glad that you brought it into it because this is my first time actually talking about it on any of the shows. But with this situation, that rule needs to be changed. I mean, right out the gate, that rule does need to be changed. And I want to say that first, that I am fully in support of changing that rule. Obviously, the opinion and things that are being found out about cannabis use and everything and the benefits of it, especially for an athlete at her level, healing-wise and pain relief-wise, I could see why she's doing it. Now, it just sucks because she also knows the rules, and the rules exist still. And while they do need to be changed 150,000%, I don't agree with the rule. She was wronged by not being able to compete in the Olympics, but she's got to just have the wherewithal and the awareness to say, okay, I got to stop 8 weeks before I know I'm going to get tested or something like that. Because this is the Olympic team. This is the Olympics. We need her. The country needs her to go and compete for us. And it's a serious thing. And this is going to bring up conversations for the future. So at the very minimum, maybe she is creating that conversation to start working on changing that rule. And overall in the entire country, because I know there are still states where it is illegal.
Yeah, I know we've kind of seen a similar situation, with Josh Gordon in years past.
Yeah.
It seems like, he's been suspended, far too many times, but at the same time, they're not like performance enhancing drugs. No. Like, marijuana is not going to help Sha'Carri Richardson run a, faster, Olympic time. It's not like, this is not a scenario like Barry Bonds taking, steroids. And to me, I don't agree with this at all because, like I said, it's not going to make them better, and it's not like helping. It's not giving them an advantage opposed to other competitors, in the Olympics. I really think this rule should be changed. I agree with what you said. She knew it was wrong type of deal. She still should have not have done it, but I still think there should not be a rule like this really in the first place.
Yeah, and I think the main thing for me, and I don't know, maybe she did plan this. Maybe she is trying to make a point like, hey, if I pop, I'm going to come out and I'm going to go ahead and say this needs to be changed. And maybe I'll be the person that starts that conversation. I don't know if I do that on the Olympic stage as far as giving up my shot in the Olympics. That's a huge sacrifice if she did it on purpose. I'm just thinking, if she had that kind of hindsight of what kind of conversation this would create, because I think it is going to create a conversation of how we're going to evaluate this in the next 4 years for the next Olympics when it comes around. But you just got to have the awareness, probably a date of when you're going to get tested. 8 weeks, I think, is long enough to be clean. If you want to do 10 to be safe, do 10. And then you can go back to it after the drug test.
Yeah, so hopefully, this rule change and everything gets changed in the future Olympics, because this is something I just do not think is necessary. But, kind of moving on to our next topic, this has been a huge topic for discussion for years. College football, it was announced on July 1st that the NCAA, athletes can get paid from their, name, image, and likeness and everything like that. What are your thoughts, on this whole situation? And do you think it's a good idea for college football?
I am for it 100%. When you think about how much money is made off of these kids and how if they don't make the pros or if they don't make the NFL, if they don't make it to some kind of football business venture or streamline, that last game your senior year, it's over. For the kid, they have to go back home and figure it out. They have to go and start a career somewhere that is outside of football and figure it out from scratch, from zero. In this situation now, those guys that don't make it, which is more than probably 95%. I mean, almost all of them do not make it to their goal destination. They can make some money. They can start a little bit of a foundation here. I know their school is already paid for, but when you look at the comparison to how much their school would cost versus how much that school makes off of these kids, especially star players, like think of guys that went to the NFL that won Heisman's and were just busts and were out the NFL. But how much money they would have made in college before they became a bust in the NFL, and how their entire family line would be set for generations if Reggie Bush was getting paid for what he was doing on that field, or any of those college athletes that were superstars that just did not make it in the league. And that's something that it's been a long time coming. It's good for us video gamers also, because that means that NCAA can maybe work his way back into the picture, legality-wise, getting the NCAA football game back out. But at the minimum, these guys, just for being on that roster of the NCAA video game, will make something. So the third-string wide receiver for Alabama is going to make a little bit of money while he's in college. I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
Yeah, you mentioned everybody making some money. I saw a thing earlier. I don't know what company it was, but there was a company giving $6,000 to each Miami, Florida player to have some money and everything, because that's something before this whole thing you could not have done. You could have gotten into serious trouble, and to me this is long overdue. I really think it should have happened years ago, because you look at some players. You mentioned some Heisman winners. You look at players even for small schools, or players who are one-year wonders. Colin Klein, for example, years ago for Kansas State, could have made so much money. There's just tons. Jordan Lynch, Northern Illinois, to me one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time, could have made so much money. And there's you can make name off your image. Everything can be in commercials. I believe Bo Nix, the quarterback of Auburn, was the first player to have a contract or with somebody. There's different players making brands like De'Aaron King, the quarterback, and Mackenzie Milton, I believe, as well. This is something that should have happened years ago. And you also mentioned the NCAA 14 video game. Not NCAA 14. That was the last one. The NCAA, video game. To me, that's definitely one of the best video games of all time. And I was reading something, I believe yesterday, and it said they're trying to make, when they make it, they might have the actual player's name, in the game. If that's true, that means players even want to make more money. Kent State backup kicker, even they're going to make some money, which is good, because lots of these kids, like you already said, 99% of them are not going to be in the NFL. And if you're on one of these teams, at least you get some money before you have a, I wouldn't say real job, but your future job type of, deal. But I think this is great for the sport. I think this should have happened a long time ago. It's long overdue, and I'm glad it's finally over with and it's finally allowed in college sports.
Yeah, they can build a springboard into a more normal life after football, and kids that make it all the way to college, football is their life. So it can be very scary for what they're going to do right when it ends. And yeah, does this affect recruiting? That is a big question. I don't think you can still pay players to come to your school, but yes, it's going to affect recruiting in a sense that you have a little bit more incentive to go to a school that is going to be on the NCAA football game if you're a backup, or if you have a hindsight that you're possibly going to be a backup. Also, you got to keep in mind these college athletes need to do their best to be responsible. There's obviously going to be bad cases. There's going to be situations where it is ugly. But imagine if a guy like Johnny Manziel had a bunch of money in college, and how damaging he could have damaged himself just having that money. We know that he was kind of a loose cannon when he was younger. Or a guy like Tyrann Mathieu. I've heard a lot of stories about him being a monster in college off the field, just being a terrible person at parties and stuff. So at the same time, this is a responsibility. College athletes need to come together and do their best.
And I something as well, months back, there was an interview with, Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney. He said once players are paid and everything, he would no longer want to be a college coach. That's probably, just talking. That's probably not going to happen. But, you have some of these, assistant coaches, let's a wide receiver coach or something like that. Some of the wide receivers you're coaching are going to be paid more than your salary, potentially, depending how big of a star they are, with different, ads and, different things like that. So maybe we see some coaches, no longer coach college football, because there could be a situation where players get paid more than head coaches. Several years ago, the year that Kyler Murray won the Heisman, heading into that season, he's had a contract signed to play with the Oakland A's. And that contract, as the season started, the contract he signed to play with the A's was actually more money than Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley's contract. So they purposely signed. They made had an extension for Lincoln Riley to give him more money, so his starting quarterback will not make more money than him once he eventually played baseball. But obviously, that did not happen and everything. But that's something to me. I think that really people need to look at, because if that happens, that opens up a whole new can of worms. And there's going to be a lot more head coaches and different head coaches not want to coach because they're getting getting paid less than some of the players they're coaching.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a change in dynamic for sure. But at the end of the day, football is a business, and it's going to run off of being a business. And these guys as coaches have to understand that there's different avenues for the athletes to make money that the coaches necessarily won't be doing it. You're not going to see, and you may see a guy like Dabo Swinney. He actually is a big name, but you're not going to see just your average named coaches, even the biggest named coaches on commercials. You're not going to see those guys making brand deals and representing certain brands unless there are, the elite of elite coaches. And even those guys you don't see very often on commercials or anything. I saw Bill Belichick did a Subway commercial, and I was like, wow, a coach on a commercial. This is pretty crazy. And it was Bill Belichick too, which made it even a little bit more special. But the coaches got to understand that football is a business. So yes, Aaron Rodgers is going to make more than Matt LaFleur by a wide margin. And you're going to see that in college football a little bit too.
And I mean, Subway probably paid Bill Belichick $3 or $4 million just to say like 5 words and have a hoodie on his head, type of deal.
Yeah,
and it's like we've seen Nick Saban being commercials as well with Aflac, so it's going to be really interesting to see some of these players being commercials, because that's something we've not really seen before. And something I thought is really interesting once you really think about it is which former college athlete would have made the most money in endorsement deals, commercials, and everything like that. Who do you think would have made the most money?
Reggie Bush. I don't know. That's just a perspective I have just because I grew up here in LA, and Reggie Bush is a legend here. There's murals of Reggie Bush at USC in Los Angeles. So I feel like being in Los Angeles, playing for USC, being the superstar that he was, I can see him being the most profitable college athlete of all time. But there's been a few quarterbacks that could have done it too. Like Trevor Lawrence has been one of one since high school. So could have he started this the offseason after his senior year of high school, and started collecting money? Yeah, he probably could have. And is this stretching out to basketball and everything too? So there's some big name Zion Williamson kind of guys that we saw recently that could make a lot of money too.
I mean, yeah, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence. To me, that's somebody definitely near the top of the list. A couple other people I think who are probably near the top as well is Johnny Manziel and definitely Tim Tebow. I feel like Tebow would have done stuff. Yeah,
there you go, right there on the money.
And Tebow, Manziel, and I'm going to go old school on this one. I think Brian Bosworth would have made a ton of money too. I mean, after college and stuff, he probably wouldn't have had anything because he was kind of a head case as well, like Manziel was. But I definitely think Bosworth would have made quite a bit of money, and that's really an underrated name. But I agree with what you said there with Reggie Bush. I mean, he would have made so much money, especially in such a top market like USC. He definitely would have been near the top as well.
Yeah, and there's so many guys like quarterbacks that play at Alabama or play at Ohio State that are just like the second string quarterback that could make so much money just being in the football game and being on the roster. It's pretty crazy. There was a year where Ohio State had Joe Burrow, Barrett, and they had another quarterback that was like a starter at
Braxton
one point. Braxton Miller. They were all on the roster at the same time. Those guys are all very talented dudes.
And I mean, you mentioned Burrow, and with Ohio State quarterbacks, it's kind of crazy because I live about an hour and a half away from Athens, and that's where Joe Burrow grew up. And I remember years ago, my uncle was telling me that there's a quarterback from Athens who signed with Ohio State. I didn't really believe him because Athens is not really that big, of a town, and it's just crazy to think, 5-6 years later, that quarterback that I randomly remember talking to him about is now going to be the quarterback who hopefully leads the Bengals to a Super Bowl victory. Keyword hopefully.
Did you see the guess the player graphic we put out like a week ago or so with Joe Burrow?
The Madden cover thing?
No, it wasn't a Madden cover thing. It was like a blanked out thing. You had to try and guess who the player was based off what high school and college they went to. You probably got it immediately. You're like, oh, that's Athens. Got it immediately.
And something that's really, really cool. We're talking about college athletes, but this doesn't really have anything to do with it. But remember last year, Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, they had like the Move the Sticks, and they had like a episode on NFL Network. And that was one of the episodes where they're breaking down Burrow's film and showing even some of his basketball highlights, because he was really good in college basketball, high school basketball as well. And over half the highlights in Burrow's high school college games were actually against my former school I went to.
Oh,
so that was pretty cool. And it was like in the gym. I played in the stuff. And I mean, who's to know? I could have saw Burrow play high school against my team. I don't think I did, but I mean, that would have been super, super cool. Burrow is somebody else who, I mean, definitely would have made a ton of money, with the endorsements and everything. But I mean, you kind of mentioned basketball. If we're talking about basketball as well, to me, it has to be Zion. A basketball and football combined. I mean, he was the top star since he's like 15 or 16 years old. I mean, a sophomore in high school. And I mean, it's really interesting. It's going to be really intriguing to see what some of these players sign with and how much money they make. And some of these guys might even end up making more money than their head coaches. And kind of switching gears to the NFL. I know you watch him quite a bit because in the same division, you're a big Chargers fan. I know Joe Morley is a big Raiders fan. There's been talks about Derek Carr possibly having a contract extension. He currently has 2 years left on his deal, and it's around $45 million-ish remaining on his contracts. What are your thoughts on the Raiders possibly extending Derek Carr? Do you think that's a good idea for Las Vegas? What price range do you think that would be? Everything like that.
Extend him. Do it. Keep him there. I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson or any of these guys that are up for trade. If there's drama in Seattle again with Russell Wilson towards the end of the year, that's kind of just like a little cloud that's hanging over the entire NFL also that everyone forgot about. But extend him so that way it keeps those quarterbacks out of Las Vegas. I don't think Derek Carr is a bad quarterback. I'm not trying to hate on him or anything. I think that he would need a team stacked around him to make a Super Bowl run. Even his MVP year, I was not as confident as Raiders fans that they were going to the Super Bowl that year before he got injured, just because they weren't really a complete team. They were on his back. He was taking them with guys like Seth Roberts being one of his key weapons. We saw what happened with Seth Roberts since then. I don't even know where Seth Roberts is. I think he went to the Jets for a little while, and I haven't heard anything from him since then. But yeah, I think Derek Carr could be a quarterback, a game manager style quarterback that can take a team to the Super Bowl, but they're going to need to stack that thing around him. So if they think that they can get him for a little bit cheaper than a mega max deal will be to get a superstar quarterback and spend that money on the defense and spend that money. And he doesn't even need all-star wide receivers to be effective. He's pretty good with what he has had in his career, which has not been a whole lot of anything. But just at least get him a defense. I think that's the biggest thing for Las Vegas over the next couple of years is to get Derek Carr and John Gruden a defense to work with that's going to be solid. They picked up Gus Bradley, and Raiders fans think that this is their coming to Jesus, that he's going to fix the entire defense. I got bad news. I thought the same thing when Gus came to the Chargers, and our defense was good his first year and even his second year as defensive coordinator. But you could tell once Philip Rivers left and the talent wasn't quite at the same level with the Chargers on defense, things changed quite a bit. So I don't think the Raiders have that talent level that Gus Bradley's defensive scheme requires, which is basically just a cover 3 zone is his go-to, his bread and butter, which works when you have high IQ zone players like Richard Sherman when he was coaching the LOB, when you have high IQ zone players like Cam Chancellor, when you got freak of nature safeties who can fly around and make big hits and make big plays on the ball like Earl Thomas. The plain cover 3 works then. But when you don't have playmakers like that, the cover 3 doesn't work. And you also need a really good linebacking core, and I believe that that's one of the Raiders' weaknesses. So we'll see what happens. I think Derek Carr just needs that cast around him to really take the Raiders to the next level. And until he gets that, they're going to continue to be this around even, sometimes in the wild card picture team. But if they want to extend Derek Carr, as far as price tag wise. If they do it now, while all these quarterbacks are on the market, like obviously you're not Aaron Rodgers or you're not. I wouldn't even say I might take Matthew Stafford over him. They're right around the same area. That you can get him for a little bit more of a discount, and that's what the Raiders want to do. Do it, and then spend the extra money on the defense.
Derek Carr to me reminds me a lot of Andy Dalton, especially with the Raider fans having mixed feelings about, Carr. This is kind of like Dalton's last year or two with Cincinnati. Lots of Bengal fans, had mixed emotions. We need to get rid of him. He can maybe give us, a couple good years, maybe take us to a playoff run. Obviously it did not happen. Like you mentioned, Derek Carr had a MVP type season a few years back. Andy Dalton did too. And Derek Carr, to me, he's not great. He's not horrible. He's good. But I agree with what you said. He needs weapons around him. He will never be the reason that you're going to be in the Super Bowl. To me, I think it would have been super smart if the Raiders would have attempted to trade to get Julio Jones and get some pieces on defense. Then I think the Raiders would, be a really nice contender. But honestly, you look at the Raiders, roster right now, their defense is not good. It's really, really bad. They did draft Trevon Moehrig, who I thought that was one of the best picks in the entire draft. He was extremely underrated. But, Derek Carr, he's right in the middle of the pack. To me, I think he's between 13 and 18, the best quarterbacks in the league, right around there. Maybe right in the middle, 15, 16 type of deal. I think Matthew Stafford is 100 times better than Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr, he's more than likely, Derek Carr is not going to be the reason you win games. He's only going to be the reason you lose games type of deal. And the Raiders, in my opinion, I think they have the worst roster in the AFC West. If Drew Lock can have a good season, I'm not talking about like a horrible season or a great season, just good, like 25 touchdowns, something like that. I think the Broncos are playoff contenders. And, that leaves the Raiders at the bottom of the division. And then after this season, you're going to have Derek Carr on 1 year left of his contract, being last in the AFC West with a more than likely horrible defense. You don't have a ton of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. To me, I think it has a lot to determine how the Raiders will play this season. I think they are somewhat of a little bit of an underrated team. But if Locke is good, to me, the Raiders are obviously going to be the worst team in the AFC West. I know, Joe won't like that, but it's pretty much just the truth in my opinion. And Carr, I think he gets overhated at times, though. He's kind of like Andy Dalton in that aspect as well. If the Raiders, decide to extend Derek Carr, in my opinion, I think it should be similar to what his contract is right now, 2 for about 45-ish. I'm not paying any over that because he's never won a playoff game. Mm-hmm. Andy Dalton hasn't either. And I think there's a lot more similarities between Dalton and Carr. I'm definitely taking Carr over Dalton. And in their prime, it would be close as well. But years ago I went to a Bengals game and they played the Raiders. And it was to Darren Waller. Derek Carr threw an over-the-shoulder pass to Darren Waller. I've been to probably about 30 Bengals games. It was probably the best pass I've ever seen for a quarterback. Carr throwing to Waller. He is underrated at times, but other times, we were talking earlier about Chris Middleton being extremely inconsistent. That's a lot like Derek Carr as well. I just think it has a lot to determine how the Raiders play this season. If they're in the playoff hunt, but at the same time they were kind of this past season up until they completely, messed up the last 5 or 6 games. If they're in playoff contention, if Carr has a good year, I don't think it would be a bad idea if the Raiders would maybe extend him. But if they're last in the AFC West, I think it would not be bad for the Raiders to go ahead and maybe be taking a quarterback of the future in the 2022 draft.
Yeah, when you're comparing the Broncos to the Raiders for which team's going to be the worst in the West, you look at the quarterback position, which is the most important position on the field, yes. But when you look at the rest of the team, the Broncos may have them in every other category, offensive line being the one close one. And I think Darren Waller obviously is his own superstar. But other than that, defensively, the Broncos are going to be better. Weapons-wise, the Broncos are going to be better. Offensive line, I think they're going to be a lot closer than a lot of Raiders fans think because you can't out-haul your whole offensive line and expect things to just be seamless. There's communication. Even if you did make the right moves and bring in the right guys for those spots, even with the Chargers O-line. I'm bracing for a slow start because there's going to be communication and chemistry issues within an offensive line as well. And a lot of the guys the Raiders are bringing in are younger guys for veterans who are used to doing this. So I think there's going to be some hiccups there, especially in the beginning of the season. I see the Raiders being, one of the bad teams this year. I don't know how bad. Will they be in quarterback position in the draft next year? That would be something to follow along with this contract top.
If the Raiders have, let's say, 6 wins or less, if you're the Raiders, would you trade Carr?
Yes.
Is there any certain team that you think he should possibly be traded to? I know it's way, way too early. And is there a certain price tag, like a 2nd-round pick, 3rd-round pick, something like that?
Oh, it'll probably if they're under 6 wins, you're going to see a similar to Carson Wentz type of deal. It's going to be really cheap, 3rd-round pick, maybe a loan or something similar to that, or compensatory picks, something like that. If they're below 6 wins, now if they're around even again and Derek Carr looks okay and he just plays that slightly above average when you look at the totality of it, but he definitely has like lows where it's like, okay, I mean that's bottom half of the league level there. But he has highs that are like, oh, he reaches almost into the top 10. So I like to say just slightly above average. He's in my top 15 probably. But yeah, if he can keep that pace, his value is going to be closer to that 2nd-round pick status. I don't think there's any way you're giving up a 1st-round pick unless it's like pick 30-something, which those teams don't need quarterbacks.
One more comparison with Andy Dalton and Derek Carr to me is, when Andy Dalton was in his prime, which was really basically 2015 up until he got hurt, but the majority of Dalton's career, when A.J. Green was not on the field, he was a completely different quarterback. Mm-hmm. When Darren Waller's not on the field, Derek Carr is a completely different quarterback. He's not nearly as good. I said he was 13-18, and obviously that's with a healthy Darren Waller. But if Darren Waller is not in the field, to me, Derek Carr drops to 20-25 or something like that. He's very inconsistent, and Darren Waller is one of the best tight ends in the league. It's not even debatable. He's easily top 3, top 5. But top quarterbacks should still be able to, be pretty good despite if their top weapon, is not on the field. We've seen that with Brady, at times when Gronkowski, was down in New England. He would make stars out of nobody like Edelman and different players like that. I know I'm comparing the most accomplished quarterback of all time to Derek Carr, but it's one of those situations. Another one is, Aaron Rodgers. He made Robert Tonyan into that it seems like a top 5 tight end this season. Yeah, Robert Tonyan was like a nobody heading into the year, and Derek Carr, to me, he has to be more consistent and he has to play a lot better, especially if Waller's not in the field. Because when Waller's not in the field, Carr is, to me, definitely one of the worst quarterbacks in the league.
I'm with you. I wouldn't say one of the worst in the league, but I definitely probably put him right there around 15, 16, 17 at that point without Waller out there. It's so hard to grade guys like Derek Carr because it's so close to guys right there in that little mid-range with him. He's so close to guys like Baker Mayfield, and their play sometimes can mirror each other a little bit fiery, sometimes a little too hard pulling the trigger, but a lot of the times just right. Just not quite an elite quarterback. And you can tell when they're not going to be an elite quarterback. Like that ship has sailed for Carr, in my opinion.
Who would you rather have, Carr or Mayfield?
Right now, I'd rather have Mayfield because at least I got something with Mayfield where he's still developing and there's a future there. I personally am not a Baker Mayfield hater, but I'm like, guys, calm down. There's people that want to put him in the top 10 already. He's not that yet, and he's nowhere near that. He had 26 touchdown year last year, and we're acting like he was in the MVP conversation. He was not. I had a guy on my TikTok comment section go into a long argue with me saying that Baker Mayfield should be higher ranked than Josh Allen. And I just about lost my damn mind. But I'm also willing to say that Baker Mayfield is becoming a game manager, and I can respect that because his problem was turnovers. So there's improvement, there's growth there. I'll take Baker for the youth and the potential growth that he's going to continue to have in the future.
To me, I kind of think that's a lot closer than some people would think because I agree what you said with Mayfield being younger, and he still has potential we haven't seen. He's, like you said, he's a game manager. And For instance, the Bengals lost to the Browns last season on Thursday Night Football. Mayfield threw for like 216 and a touchdown. Mayfield. It was like week 2.
Ground game, yeah.
Mayfield, he might be an MVP candidate. He threw for 216 yards. Mayfield is good, but I think he's extremely overrated. I'm not trying to be biased, being a Bengals fan, but I feel like if you put Derek Carr in a situation in Cleveland, and they swap scenarios, I don't know if Oakland would be. I don't know if Las Vegas would be as good, and I think the Browns with Carr would probably be just about the same, maybe a game behind, but I would probably take Mayfield because of the potential we haven't seen yet. But I really think they're very comparable in the fact, like I said, Carr was 13 to 18. I would put Mayfield right around that range as well. Mm-hmm. To me, there's not a huge difference of their play. If you swap teams, I think their teams are most likely going to have a similar record, opposed, with Carr being in Las Vegas and Mayfield being in Cleveland.
I like it. This is what I tell Browns fans when I'm combating them, which is regularly at this point. I tell them that when you're talking about what turned around the Browns, talking about your top 5, maybe Baker's on the edge of that, but the offensive line and the running backs hold more responsibility to the Browns' turnaround than Baker Mayfield. Myles Garrett holds more responsibility to the Browns' turnaround than Baker Mayfield. Kevin Stefanski is more responsible for the Browns' turnaround. Where on this list is Baker? He's way down there. And if Kirk Cousins was the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns when all of this started to turn around, it would have still turned around. There was a lot more factors into it. Yes, Baker Mayfield's the poster boy. He's the guy that's out in front of everyone. He's got the college, swagger, I guess is what it was. The story behind him, the confidence behind him. Yes, we want to give it to Baker Mayfield, but really this turnaround was smart draft picks, building that offensive line, getting the right coach, and overall building a team. It is not Baker Mayfield's not Aaron Rodgers coming in there and completely changing it. There's no way. And if the Browns were approached with a deal for Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or Watson, any of those guys, the Browns would probably take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, hang in with Julie and Will if you want to come in a podcast. Yeah, you can mess with me on Twitter or something like that. We can talk about that. And with Mayfield, he has all the weapons around him when Carr doesn't. He has a top 5, top 10 wide receiver core. He's one of the better tight ends in the league. Has a top 10 offensive line. Has a top 10 defensive line. Has a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
Derek Carr has a top 10 tight end. Everything else, he doesn't have anything like great except for Darren Waller. And the Browns have the best roster, in my opinion, in the AFC. They're right behind Tampa Bay on the best roster. And you can put, Joe Burrow on, this team right now. You can put, Roethlisberger last year of his career with Cleveland right now, and they're still going to get you at least 10 wins. That really shows how much, depth and how great of a roster Cleveland has, and compared to Carr and Las Vegas, who doesn't. And it's very interesting, especially with, how people overrate Mayfield. We're kind of talking about, if there's a scenario with people, Carr and, Mayfield swapping teams, how they would be similar. There's also, there's kind of switching to the next topic. There was a trade request yesterday with former first-round pick, current New England Patriots wide receiver N'Keal Harry has requested a trade. What are your thoughts on that? And is there any specific team that you think he might end up going to?
That's interesting. This is actually the first I'm hearing of this. Sorry for being out the loop before I come on. N'Keal Harry requesting a trade. That's interesting because when N'Keal Harry came out the draft, I was like, this kid's got some potential to be one of those jump ball kind of wide receivers. He reminded me a lot of what Mike Williams does for us. That's what he reminded me of in college a ton. And I thought that's what he was going to be for the Patriots. The Patriots don't seem to know how to use him. I think any team could be in the conversation to pick him up because he could become a wide receiver 3, and that is completely reasonable. So it's hard to tell. It's not necessarily gotta be a wide receiver needy team because N'Keal Harry still has a lot of proving to do before he's worth any kind of trade value. So I don't know. Maybe some of these low end teams, maybe a team like the Jaguars or someone that does have receivers that can play above him but can get him in the mix. They have room to get him in the mix, something like that. There's other teams, the Jets, and I'm just saying like the rookie quarterback teams. I'm not meaning to do it on purpose, but one of those teams that, yes, they have a receiving core already planned to roll out, but do they have room for N'Keal Harry to get into that mix? 100%. It's going to probably be one of the lower end teams. What about the Dolphins? That would be interesting. But I don't think they would trade within division, would they? It's Brian Flores.
You really don't see that much, though. But with Flores' connection with New England, it's possible. But, I mean, you don't really see that much.
Cincinnati?
I mean, the 7th round pick, I wouldn't mind it. But our wide receiver core is a lot better than people think, in my opinion. It's definitely top 10.
He would just come in and be a wide receiver for a plug-in or if someone gets hurt kind of situation. But you guys have your top 3. After that, N'Keal Harry would be an amazing 4.
Yeah, we have Auden Tate. During, when he gets the ball, he's very really, really good. But he does not get a ton of targets because, with Burrow getting hurt and, with Dalton's last year, I mean, we had Finley play some. We've had lots of quarterbacks play the last 2 seasons. But with Auden Tate has got the ball, he's shown lots of promise. But, I mean, I wouldn't mind Harry. But if it's anything more than a 6th, I probably wouldn't do it. There's 2 teams to me I think makes a lot of sense. One is the Packers because, I mean, you trade a 6th, 7th round pick for N'Keal Harry, who was a first round pick just a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Give Aaron Rodgers more weapons to give him, giving him a reason to possibly return to Green Bay makes a lot of sense. And, N'Keal Harry, I mean, his NFL career is not over. Getting a fresh start, one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, a guy who just won the MVP last season. Would make so much sense. I think it'll be a great spot for N'Keal Harry, and it'll be a smart move for Green Bay. And the other team is the Arizona Cardinals. And I know I said I wouldn't really want the Bengals to get Harry because they have a great wide receivers. The Arizona Cardinals definitely have one of the best wide receiver corps as well. DeAndre Hopkins, you can make a case, is the best wide receiver in the league, but that's really debatable. AJ Green, but he is washed up and maybe has a year or 2 left. Andy Isabella, some of those other guys, Christian Kirk. But when N'Keal Harry was coming out of the draft, in 2019, he said he would love to be an Arizona Cardinal. And if he was dropped to the 2nd round at the 33rd pick, he said he would be surprised if he was not picked by the Arizona Cardinals at pick 33. So they had tons of links and connections back in the draft several years ago. And to get more young depth, I don't think is a bad idea for Arizona at all, considering AJ Green's going to get hurt at some point of the season. You just don't know when. To get some more young depth to pair with Kyler Murray, who I think is going to have an MVP-like season this year, I think Arizona, to me, makes a lot of sense, and Green Bay makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, I would like to see an Arizona deal. I don't really have like a N'Keal Harry hopes either. Like he could get traded and be one of those guys that just disappears into the wide receiver backup realm and is just bouncing around being a journeyman.
Yeah, it seems like lots of wide receivers anymore are kind of like that, especially like young guys. If they don't have great production the first couple of years, or we're going to trade you for a 5th, we're with that team for 1 year, then you get waived, and just a whole lot of stuff, especially with wide receivers and quarterbacks. It seems like. With the Sam Darnold trade, with Carolina, and different things like that, and completely switching topics here. We've talked about the NFL, with Derek Carr and N'Keal Harry possibly being traded. I saw a soccer sign that I thought was interesting. It said pineapple does not belong on pizza. I've never had pineapple on pizza before. I'm from Huntington, West Virginia, where you eat pizza with like pizza sauce and cheese. You don't put pineapples, you don't put ranch or anything like that on a pizza. Do you think pineapple belongs on pizza?
No, and I've given it a fair shot. I've tried it multiple times in my life. Every time I see it, I feel like I try it. Because every time I see it, I go, wow, are you really eating pineapple pizza right now? And they'll be like, it's so good. You'd be surprised. You should try it. I'd take a bite in front of them and say, this is nasty. I don't like it. It's awful, as it was last time I tried it. Just to prove a point to them that I have tried pineapple pizza. And no, pineapple's flavor does not go with cheese in any way, shape, or form. I like the Canadian bacon. It's ham. I like the Canadian bacon on pizza, but not with the pineapple still. And I know a lot of people like it with the pineapples. It's like I'm cool with all the other toppings. Just pineapples doesn't make sense with cheese. That'd be like having fish with cheese or something, like fish tacos with a bunch of cheese on them. Like that just doesn't go together.
There's probably about 10 or so different local pizza places around here, and there that I know of, I don't think there's a single pizza place around here that actually has pineapple on pizza, because that's something you just don't see like around here. Pineapple to me, they're okay, they're not great, but I don't really think they'd be good on pizza. You mentioned like bacon, ham, stuff like that. That's good on pizza, but pineapple with the cheese and the sauce and everything, I just do not think it would be good. That's kind of one of those like different places you are. Like I'm from Huntington. I mean, you said you're from LA. Lots of, different like food choices. Like I saw something, there was a post about pepperoni rolls around here. And then I saw on Twitter, like tons of people have never even heard of that before. It has a lot to do with your location. I've never had pineapple on pizza, but honestly, just by hearing about it, I think it would probably suck.
Well, if you ever see it, just take a bite and then be like, yep, Michael's right. It does suck.
And basically, prove Joe wrong. He said pineapple. I don't know how it came to be about. We were talking about it sometime on here. He was talking about how amazing pineapple on pizza was. It's delicious. You have to try it and everything.
Joe Morley's catchphrase for his like personal show and brand is "my opinion, what's yours" or whatever it is. Yes, it's his opinion. He should keep it his opinion. And most of his opinions, actually, not just the pineapple thing.
But one final topic here. This is something I get very aggravated about. There's lots of different movie remakes, it seems like, each year. And, this next couple of weeks, there's actually a couple movie remakes that, to me, that make absolutely no sense. There's Space Jam with LeBron. And before we started, you unfortunately had to tell me that you were bronsexual. And what are your thoughts on the Space Jam preview? And do you think it's a good idea that they're making a sequel to it?
Yeah, I think we have a little bit of a different outlook on the remake thing. I like to see like the new modern twist on things. So when they made the new Jumanjis, I actually liked that they made it into a video game instead of a board game. Like that modern twist. I kind of like those kind of callbacks and those kind of tweaks to remakes or to movies like this. And I have to support my guy LeBron as a leader of the LeBron fan club. I just go ahead and call myself LeBron sexual because I get called it so many times in my comment sections. No, I don't think it was okay that Bron walked out on his team. But if you also take into account that he probably was going backstage for early treatment on his ankle, you might have a different perspective, because I've seen that happen in sports before where guys on my own team, I did play pro ball overseas, had to go in the locker room early because they had an injury that they were playing through. They need to get on ice, and the game's already over. We lost or won. Either or. So you just got to have a different perspective on it. But I'm okay with the Space Jam remake. Some of them are bad. If you're going to make a remake, it has to be good. Like it'll be the third Jumanji and the second remake. I didn't like that one as much, but the original one was a lot of fun. Not the original Jumanji, yes, was a good movie. The original remake. They've made 3, I think, or something like that, remakes.
I'm trying to ask you if you think, Space Jam's a good idea, and you randomly say, not a big deal that you played pro ball overseas. I did not know that. How did that come to be about?
I was out there for the military service, and there were tryouts for the team, and I tried out and made it and was the starter for a couple of years.
That's really, really cool. But
yeah, I played in the Tokyo Dome. It was fun. It was awesome.
Oh, that's where they have Wrestle Kingdom with New Japan, I think. Is that right?
Yep, that's the wrestling thing that they do there. They have a lot of baseball events there. Ichiro played there. Otani, that's his home stadium where his team played when he was in Japan. Actually, I caught some Otani just before he moved to America, which was super awesome. And he is an icon over there, by the way. On all the billboards, he's their Michael Jordan.
He's definitely taken the baseball world by storm. With the Home Run Derby next week, I'd be really interested to see how he does. But, Space Jam, to me, it was announced in July 2013 that we're making a sequel. And to me, I didn't really think it was a good idea. And, fast forward 8 years. It took 8 years to have a trailer finally come out in a week or so. I just don't like remakes. It seems like every single thing, like TV shows and movies anymore, are just all remakes. You mentioned Jumanji. I didn't really have that much of a problem with like the first sequel with The Rock and Jack Black, but the second one that came out last year or so, the second sequel they had with them, to me, I just didn't really think that was necessary. And I think the first sequel with The Rock and Jack Black 100 times better than the second one they made of them.
Yeah.
They tried way too hard.
That's what it comes down to, especially with the remakes. Like, if you're gonna do the remake, it needs to be good. It needs to be good. And the second Jumanji, if that was what the first one was when they first came back with the remake, it just wasn't as good. And it could have been the fact they're just trying to stretch out the dollar signs with it because they know the first one was so successful. But it just wasn't good. Like, remake or not remake, it's either good or bad.
And, one other remake, I was kind of talking about before the show, I was watching the playoffs last week, and I randomly looked at the TV, and there was a movie of Snake Eyes from, G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe, obviously, was one of the top cartoons in the 80s. And then they had the two actual, human version, movies about 10 years or so. They had the first one, Channing Tatum, and then the second one with The Rock. That's kind of a similar situation with Jumanji. I thought the first one was good, but the second one, there was no reason the second one should have been made, especially considering in the first one, Storm Shadow dies, and in the second movie, he's alive. And I think it was the first, I don't remember which one it was. They showed Snake Eyes when he was young, and he was brought in by this, old wise guy type of deal. And Storm Shadow, killed his sensei. And in the previews of this new Snake Eyes movie, makes no sense. They have Snake Eyes being recruited by Storm Shadow in some cult type of deal. I just don't get the remakes, especially when it's unnecessary. Like, for instance, I saw a thing, the Powerpuff Girls, cartoon years ago. They're making a live action show of that on the CW.
I saw that.
Nobody asked for that. That makes no sense at all. I just do not get some of these remakes. They don't make any sense. Nobody asked for them, so don't even bother doing them, in my opinion.
It just comes down to, are you guys going to make a good remake or be one of the storyline bad remakes? There's both sides to this spectrum.
But, there's a couple good remakes. Like, to me, some of my favorite movies, I really, really like Anchorman 2, Grown Ups 2, and Dumb and Dumber 2. Those are the only, sequels, in my opinion, that were really, really good. You can actually make a case some of those sequels are better than the original movies. And on those movies, they actually knew what they were doing. And it's not like the original movies were bad. They were both great. But those movies, to me, those were pretty much the only great sequel movies. Everything else, it's like they try too hard and the storylines don't make any sense. And it just needs to stop, in my opinion.
Those are a certain genre of movies, right? Those goofy comedy movies, those Adam Sandler movies. You can keep redoing that over and over again and just change the jokes up, and it's going to be entertaining. In Grown Ups, I think they threw Shaq in there as a cop or something. Stuff like that to add a little bit to the movie works for that kind of genre. But for a serious movie, it's not quite the same. It's just not the same.
It's Taken. I mean, they made 3 Takens. I mean, they were all good, but once all 3 of those movies ended, they actually made a Taken TV show, which I did not even know about that until recently. I just don't get some of these, remakes and stuff. But with Space Jam coming out next week and the Snake Eyes movie coming up, pretty much soon. Hopefully, I don't even know if I want to go to the theaters and see Space Jam. I'm just very kind of distraught they're making another one. It makes no sense. If you're going to have it, to me, you have to have Jordan in it in some capacity. Space Jam is one of those movies, like what you said with Adam Sandler movies. You can continue to make them or change its storyline and everything like that, because that genre of comedy, everybody loves that. Space Jam, it's not going to get nearly as much ticket sales compared to Space Jam years ago, because it seems like younger kids now don't really pay attention to Looney Tunes and stuff like that. I don't think, maybe 10 years ago, I think it would have been if they released a movie in 2011, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. But the fact that you waited so long to have it, and I just don't really think it's necessary.
Yeah, people in their 20s to 30s who know about Bugs Bunny and grew up with Bugs Bunny as one of their main cartoons are going to be the people that are more excited to watch this than actual little kids. And it's going to be a kid movie. If Michael Jordan makes an appearance, will you watch the movie in theaters? If you find out that Michael Jordan did make an appearance in the movie.
Probably not, because honestly, I don't like Jordan or LeBron.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the Snake Eyes movie, I would probably go see in theaters, but the Space Jam, I maybe get it off Redbox or something. But I don't know. If they had Larry Bird in it, I would maybe consider watching it because I'm a big Larry Bird fan. But I mean, I don't know. I just don't really know why they made one. It is going to be interesting, though. The trailer, to me, wasn't really good, but it's like some trailers you see, the trailers suck, but then you actually watch the movie. Sometimes the movie's a lot better than the trailer, but, we'll see and stuff, and, exactly. And, we've talked about a lot of stuff here. The NBA Finals, the Sha'Carri Richardson, not in the Olympic team. College athletes now be able to get paid for likeness. Derek Carr's contract extension deal, possibly. N'Keal Harry requesting a trade. Does pineapple belong on pizza? And to cap it off, we have to stop the movie remakes. So, Mike, can you tell some of the listeners can follow you on social media?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, man. I always have a great time. I will come back anytime. Sorry for being late. I mixed up my PTs and my ESTs. It happens to me on a daily basis, honestly. So I got to get better at that anyways. But thanks for having me on. You can find me, Mike on the Mike Sports, on all platforms. That's for my personal stuff. But really, what I need to plug you guys into, if you are viewers of this, I see Hanging with July and Wilk wanted to collab with you. You can hit us up as well. Warzone Sports Network. Here's the Shield on YouTube and all platforms. But on YouTube is where most of our content posts. We're at a point now, like today, we have 3 pieces of content coming out. We're posting twice a day at the minimum, and it's either a live stream or a pre-recorded show or a vlog to a sporting event. The newest one's dropping in the next couple of days. Tony Tucker went to an Angels game just to yell at Ohtani all day. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. That's dropping in the next couple of days. Warzone Sports Network on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll make sure to put the links in the description for the Warzone Sports Network. I mean, I do lots of stuff for subs and different crap like that. But your all's content is pretty much the only channel I'll actually watch. It's very entertaining. Your live streams and the finals. I mean, I know I talked about it last time you were on here, but that mock draft you all had with Rappaport, that was
fun.
That was really, really cool. And thanks for joining and stuff. You can find me, the Sports 2 Hunt Show on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time on the Sports 2 Hunt Show.